Hey, what is up guys? So we are going to be taking a look at Big Burn, which is a awesome side deck trap card for this format because it can tactically ruin your opponent to the point where they simply just lose. So let's go ahead and jump right into the effect of Big Burn, and then we are going to be going over some of the decks that would lose to Big Burn if it's activated at the right time. So its effect is you can only activate this card when your opponent activates a card that targets a monster in the graveyard. Remove from play all monsters in both players' graveyards. So that's a pretty devastating effect. Technically it can hurt you too, but if your deck doesn't really need the graveyard at all, this card is absolutely crazy, and it banishes your opponent's entire graveyard, yours as well. But like I said, if your deck doesn't need the graveyard, hey, this card is pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the decks that would lose to a card like Big Burn. So we're getting more support for the vampire archetype. So obviously Zombie Master is a pretty good card. There's Plague Spread and Mizuki. There's so many other things that you need to get out with Zombie Master to pull off some huge combos. And if you banish their entire graveyard, man, without those Mizukis, they are going to be pretty darn sad. So zombies can technically lose to Big Burn. Also, Dragunities, once they go for the ducks to summon, the phalanx, and they go for their plays, you just be like, nope, I'm sorry, Dragunity ducks. There's no longer cards in your graveyard to actually get back, because you're banishing all of them, which is actually pretty darn nasty. Next up, INZEKTOR Hornet, obviously, or INZEKTOR Ladybug. Those are all cards where you can actually hurt INZEKTORs quite a bit if you actually just banish their entire graveyard, because, this deck could always see some play just because it's a pretty easy deck to play, and it's relatively simple to pick up all the cards for it. Next up, Mermails. I mean, there's also the Abyss Squall, which actually targets in the graveyard, and then there's Gun, which targets in the graveyard. There's probably other cards that target things in the graveyard in that deck. So yeah, this card's actually pretty darn nasty to deal with, especially when they go for Gun and they end up making the Draco Sack or the Big Eye. It becomes pretty nasty, but if they happen to have no more cards in the graveyard, that's pretty dirty. Next up, we have the Fire Fist archetype. Now, pretty much it's just Spirit that is really like the problem card, but this card got it got hit pretty hard in the TCG and OCG. It's much more viable. Next up, we have Lightsworn. I mean, Lumina sometimes brings back a Lila before the Lightsworn player wants to summon Judgment Dragon. They want to use a Lila effect to pop a back row before they go for their big powerful Judgment Dragon play. So if they go ahead and go Lumina, they discard a card to target a Lila in the graveyard. You then banish all their Lightsworn, and then they have a dead JD. So that's actually a pretty good way to defeat Lightsworn, because Lumina is at 3. I believe this card went down to 1, and then it went to 2, then it went back to 3. But yeah, Lumina can be pretty nasty if they go Lumina into Lumina into Lumina into another card, and then they drop a JD, and yeah, and it gets pretty nasty sometimes. But yeah, if you just banish all their cards in the graveyard, man, they are going to be very sad. Next up, Blackwings. This is a very popular deck, and Blizzard obviously targets a card in the graveyard, so you can just banish their entire graveyard, and then they're left with a 1300 attacker on the field. Next up, Infernity's Necromancer. It says you just special summon one Infernity monster, but according to online, that targets, because I know there's some things that just don't target in Yu-Gi-Oh, which they technically should, but you know how Yu-Gi-Oh is. Now, there's one deck where I think it's kind of like 50-50, depending on what they actually went for as far as their play. The whole Plant Ruler or Dragon Ruler deck, because that can technically help them out a lot. But if you're banishing like everything in their graveyard, that can technically hurt them a lot, because even if they are able to add stuff, losing Dandelion in that deck can hurt, because that is their main target with Debris Dragon. And on top of that, banishing the Card Troopers and all the other stuff that they normally would want to, banish perhaps if they really need to, just to get out like a Redox or, whatever they need to get out. Yeah, that can technically hurt them, but remember that, the E-Dragons, they're too good because they keep on adding all those cards when you banish them. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, I think Big Burn definitely has a place in the side deck if some of these decks, are a problematic card or problematic decks for you. Vanity's Emptiness is a fantastic card, but the only thing I don't like with that is, a lot of decks expect that, so they save the MST. All the good players always watch out for the Vanity's Emptiness, because that, obviously wins games on its own. But yeah, Big Burn, not so bad at all, and this card is a lot cheaper than Vanity's Emptiness. I'm not sure if some of you guys have checked the price on that card recently, but if you haven't, yeah, if you guys can get those as throw-ins, Vanity's Emptiness, it's a trap card, pretty darn good. If you maybe go to a local, sometimes they have a common bin for like 10 cents to a quarter. Hey, pick up some of those Vanity's Fiends. That card is pretty awesome, but Big Burn, awesome, cheap card, and it can wreck some cookies. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. And if you felt like I missed any of the decks that would actually lose to Big Burn, let me know in the comment section below, and yeah, we'll add it to the list of decks that would get ruined by Big Burn. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Asian Eyes out.